What's up, YouTube? It's PJ here, and I'm coming at you guys with my Master Magician Pendulum deck. This is pretty much my put together from the Order of Spellcasters structure deck that I previously showcased in one of my previous videos. And Endymion is now making his way back. And if you're not familiar with the spellcaster, spell counter deck situation, don't worry, I'll take the time to also talk about that in this video. And without further ado, it's time to talk about my variation of Endymion Pendulum. So, for the lineup, I'm running 3 copies of Endymion, the Mighty Master of Magic. I'm running 3 copies of Reflection of Endymion, 3 copies of Magister of Endymion, 3 copies of Servant of Endymion. Then I'm running 3 copies of Fairy Tale Luna, 3 copies of Droll and Lockbird, and 3 copies of Effect Veiler. So that is it for my monsters. Alright, I want to move on to my spells. And my spells are 3 copies of Spell Power Mastery, 3 copies of Spell Power Grasp, 3 copies of Magical Citadel of Endymion, 2 copies of Magical Dimension, 2 copies of Terraforming, 2 copies of Pot of Desires, and 1 copy each of Raigeki, Dark Hole, Monster Reborn, and Upstart Goblin. So that is pretty much it for my spells. And then, for the extra deck, I'm running 3 copies of Daybreaker, the Shining Magical Warrior, 1 copy of Nightmare Phoenix, 1 copy of Underclock Taker, 1 copy of Yugioh Skulldread, 1 copy of Barrel Sword Dragon, and then for all my Exceed monsters, I'm running 1 copy of Gaga Cowboy, 1 copy of Abyss Dweller, 1 copy of Castell, 1 copy of Tornado Dragon, Exciton Knight, Red Eyes Flare Metal Dragon, Big Eye, and Babushka. So that is pretty much it for both the main and the extra. So now it's time to go over. So the first monster I want to talk about is, of course, Endymion, the Mighty Master of Magic. So, Endymion has a ton of effects on himself. And the reason why I won 3 is because this is your boss monster. This is also one of your 2 highest pendulum scales that you will be playing in this deck. Because you're playing pretty much a range between 2 and 8 in terms of pendulum scales. So Endymion's effects is you can remove up to 6 counters on the 6 spell counters on the field. 2, special summon this guy from your pendulum zone. When this guy is special summoned, he has the effects to destroy up to the number of cards your opponent controls equal to the number of spell counters on the field. No, I'm sorry, I'm reading his pendulum effect. He can remove 6 counters from himself to destroy every card on the field up to the number of cards you have on the field that have a spell counter. Then for each card that was destroyed, you gain a spell counter that you'll place on this card. So spell counters are pretty much specific cards. Say every time a spell is activated, you place 1 spell counter on it, and you get additional effects for having spell counters on you, removing spell counters, or other cards having spell counters. It's pretty much was a big gimmick for a lot of those cards in the old days, and we have a lot of those older cards actually in the deck right now. But Endymion is one of the monsters that has the most unique stuff about him. Now, when he's on the field, Endymion's ability is that he can return 1 card you control that can hold a spell counter and negate the activation of a spell, trap, or monster effect and destroy that card. Then, for every counter that was on a card that you returned if your return card you use for this effect had spell counters on it, you place those number of spell counters onto Endymion. And then I believe his other effect is... while he has spell counters, he can't be destroyed by a card effect. And then he can't be destroyed by your opponent's card effect, and can't be targeted by your opponent's card effect. But if he's destroyed by battle, you can special summon... you can add 1 Endymion card. No, I'm sorry, 1 normal spell from your deck to your hand. Sorry, I get this one mixed up with Reflection of Endymion. But yeah, that is 3 of the big guy. I'm running 3 copies of Reflection because of the fact that she's the second lowest pendulum scale because she's the 2, and then Servant is also a 2, while Endymion and Mastery are your 8. So what Reflection does is every time a spell card is activated, she will gain encounter. Then she can remove up to 3 counters from herself, to summon herself to the field, as well as a card from your hand that can hold a spell counter. And if you do such, both of them will no, she'll be able to place another spell counter on herself. Then her monster effect is, if I'm reading this right, she can you only special summon a copy of her once per turn. But if this card is special summon, you can target 1 card your opponent controls and 1 card you control with a spell counter, except this card. Return those cards to hand. Then you place the same number of spell counters that's on this card from that card onto it. And then when this card is with a spell counter is destroyed by battle, you can add 1 Endymion card from your deck to your hand. So she pretty much searches when she's destroyed by battle, which is weird because she has like 2700 defense, and she's going to be sinking defense for the most part. But her scale is what you're going to be using her for the first part. The second part, of course, is such summon her with removing the 3 spell counters, and it's such summon a monster that can take spell counters, which isn't hard either. And then, luckily enough, the big guy doesn't have any restrictions onto his special summons. You can play her and then play the big guy, and then float around the spell counters. And of course, the typical thing of spell counter having cards is that they take spell counters every time a spell is activated, so she can gain more counters and stuff, and then just really be a big powerhouse in terms of just removing stuff and then dealing with a lot of the things the big guy needs, especially when it comes to searching, because you can search that Endymion card and add it to your hand. Next up is the Servant and the Magister. So I'm going to place both of these guys on the field, primarily because they're also a similar situation. They have reverse attack and defense. While she has 500 attack, he has 15. No, 900 attack, he has 15. He has her attack as his defense, and she has his attack as her defense. Now, what's relevant about these 2 monsters is their effect. Servant can remove 3 counters from herself. She can special summon herself and from the Pendulum Zone and a monster from your deck with 1,000 or more attack that can take a pendulum. That can take a spell counter and put both of them on the field and give themselves spell counters. When she has a spell counter on her, she can attack directly. And then her other effect is, if I'm not mistaken, if this card in your monster zone is destroyed, you can place it into your Pendulum Zone instead of sending it to the extra deck. Same thing with Magister of Endymion. I just want to make sure I got all his effects together. Yeah, so when he attacks directly, he has a spell counter on himself. When your opponent's turn, you can remove 3 counters from him to set summon a monster from your deck, who can place a spell counter on itself and then place on the field. If this card in your monster zone is destroyed, you can place it in your Pendulum Zone instead, and then place the same number of counters that was on this card when it was in the monster zone onto itself. I actually like both of their artwork. And what's ironically funny is the staffs they're holding kind of remind me of the Fortune Lady staffs that they hold. But these are 2 strong pendulum monsters that work well with the spell counter engine, level 3s as well. And when it comes to this wide range of pendulum summoning they both have, as well as Endymion and Servant, it just makes it so much better when you can summon a lot of your big guys and not have to worry about them. Other than that, I think, they both share the same effect of special summoning a monster by removing themselves. Special summoning themselves in the counters. But I believe Endymion gets the monster. Mastery gets them. No, Mastery gets one from the extra deck, and she gets them from the deck. That's the only big difference. Alright, then Fairy Tale Luna is pretty much a searcher for either herself or Reflection. I believe her other effect resolves about targeting a monster your opponent controls and then sending 1 card with that monster's name from their deck or extra deck to graveyard to negate that monster's effects. Both this and that card are otherwise returned to hand, which is perfectly fine because it's compulsed to get rid of something or you can negate something. But for the most part, you're searching with her. Either you're searching a copy of herself or you're searching for Reflection of Endymion because she actually happens to have 1850 attack. So That is a good way to search out for reflection. On a normal summon, because she's spellcaster, she's light, so you get those benefits from her as well. I'm moving on to Droll and Lockbird in Effect Veiler. I chose these to be my hand traps of choice, primarily just because if you want, you can put Magical Abductor in here. She can get to them faster, but for the most part, you want these two to be your hand traps. So Veiler negating monster effects, and then Droll and Lockbird being able to stop your opponent from doing searches and draws outside of the draw phase. With their card effects. So that is pretty much all my monsters. Next, we'll move on to the spells. We're going to talk about Citadel of Endymion. We're going to talk about Spell Power Grasp and Spell Power Mastery. Running multiples of these because you want to see them, you want to get these to your hand. So anyone who's new to spell counters, two of the oldest cards for spell counters is right here. The Magical Citadel of Endymion and the Spell Power Grasp. What Spell Power Grasp does is it puts a spell counter on a card that can take spell counters. And then you search your deck for a copy of it and add it to your hand. But you only activate one Spell Power Grasp once per turn. Spell Power Mastery is just an advanced version of this card, except for it searches for an Endymion card and adds it to your hand. Then, for the number of copies of itself and Spell Power Grasp starts in the graveyard, you can place that many number of spell counters on the cards among your side of the board that can take spell counters. But you only activate each. You can only activate the effects. You can only activate one Spell Power Mastery per turn. And then you have the giant field spell, the Citadel of Endymion. So every time a spell card is activated, this card will gain a counter. For any card that needs spell counters to activate its effect, you can remove a number of counters off of Endymion to assist that card in activating its effect. Also note that Endymion Citadel cannot be destroyed by card effects while it has a counter on it. And I believe... Oh, and of course, it gets its counters for every time a spell card is activated. So in combination with Spell Power Grasp, Spell Power Mastery, this thing can hold up to a lot of counters, and then just supply counters to a lot of other cards that need it. So that is the three of them. Then, because like that's literally the biggest old school spell card is Spell Power Grasp. Gathering Your Mind, which is another old school card, but it's pretty much just cards that say do this effect to get a spell counter and then move on. I'm running 2 copies of the Magical Dimension. This is a really good card for a lot of spellcaster decks. It helps if you control a spellcaster, tribute a monster you control, so summon a spellcaster from your hand. Then you have the option to destroy a monster on your opponent, on your opponent's side of the board. Because of how monsters like Fortunately Light and Fortunately Water work, a lot of people have took this card out of the deck or tried to find ways to speed up the summon of a process. Thank you, Fortune Fairies. So that way you can have access to Magical Dimension and not be hurt by its weird ruling. Because it has the option to destroy a monster or not. And that's part of the reason why Stardust can't destroy it or negate it. And that's also part of the reason why, fortunately, Light Kingdom is Zero Timing. Because it's an optional effect over another optional effect. And then, crazy shenanigans that this game gives us. 2 copies of Terraforming to search out for my Citadel of Endymion, and it's still at 2. And then Double Pot of Desires. This was a card that I was very skeptical about. Pot of Desires is not a bad card for this deck in the terms of it's a spell card, so it'll count as a spell counter. But it's a big drawback. Excuse me. If you're playing this card, the biggest drawback is, of course, you lose 10 cards out of your deck, but you gain 2 cards in draw. The problem with that is you don't know until you look after the card resolves what card you banished for its effect. And it pretty much would suck if you lose a large portion of these. Like, I've had some test plays where Pot of Desires lost all of my spell power masteries, but I got my Raigeki and Dark Hole, but I couldn't juice up anything and I couldn't look for my Endymion monsters. Some people will probably say Pot of Extravagance is going to be a better option, and I actually would advise that because, one, this Pot of Extravagance only cuts into your extra deck. For the most part, you're probably running this variation of it that runs the Magical Warrior, was it Arcanine Magician and stuff like that. So, I mean, if this is your only option, this was the only big draw card from the structure deck. Um, I would go for it. Otherwise, I'd be running Pot of Extravagance, which is also ironic because I'm running Upstart Goblin. And because Upstart's at 1 day of pieces at 1 due to other decks in the game that just abuse stuff, I figured why not just run the Pot of Desires, get it over with, and then you wouldn't have to worry about much. And then, of course, you have your staples of Regeki and Dark Hole to wipe out monsters. Monster Reborn to get something from the graveyard, and then the one Upstart Goblin because free draw, and then give your opponent that 1,000. Alright, so that is it for pretty much all the spells. Like, there's no trap cards in this because I want to just stick to focusing on nothing with the spells. Alright, so now we're going to move on to the extra deck. Breaker, the Magical Daybreaker, the Shining Magical Knight. So, this is pretty much an advanced version of Breaker, the Magical Warrior. When this card is link summoned, you can place a counter on it. This card gains 300 attack for each spell counter that's on this card. Once a turn, if a spellcaster monster you control is set to summon to a zone this card points to, place another spell counter on it. Then, once a turn, you can target one card your opponent controls, remove a spell counter from this card, and destroy that card. So it's pretty much, like I said, it's Breaker the Magical Warrior. Bright side to the summon. Excuse me. Bright side to the summon, 2 spellcaster monsters for its summon. And because every monster in this deck is spellcaster, you get easy access to it. You have an easy access to a breaker. And not just a breaker of back row, but you can break monsters and stuff. So you can disrupt a lot of plays, like Attribute and the Spellcaster, which is not bad. He also points bottom left and bottom right, which it helps out as well. A lot of 1-ofs in terms of the rest of the Link monsters, like Nightmare Phoenix to get rid of spells and traps. Underclock Taker to give some assistance with the markers that he points to. Yugioh, the Yugioh Skull Dread. So this is a popular monster right now because of its ability to increase the attack points of your monsters that it points to, allows you to draw 4 cards, then send 3 of them to the bottom of your deck, based on the number of monsters that are used for its summon. And the thing about Yugioh is you have these monsters that have a different name. Luckily enough, most of the monsters in this deck don't share the same name, unlike some other decks I have. And this would be a great option for Endymion because of the fact that it's draw manipulation. Then the pointers that it has helps you tremendously as well because 3 of them are pointing out your side of the field. So when you pendulum summon, you can pendulum summon into those 3 areas, and you can link and exceed and all of that. Next up is the Barrel Sword Dragon. And I'm running Barrel Sword because Barrel Load Dragon. I said Barrel Sword. Barrel Load Dragon. Barrel Load is just a simple 3k monster. When it takes out something, it can big eye it, and then you can I believe it's banished during the end phase. Hold on, because I haven't read this card in a minute. Okay, so either player can target this card with monster effects. Once a turn, you can target one face-up monster in the field and loses 500 attack. Your opponent cannot activate cards or effects in response to it. During the damage step, if this card attacks the opponent's monster, you can place your opponent's monster in a zone this card points to and take control of it, but send it to the graveyard during the end phase of the next turn. So yeah, it is a monster swipe during the damage step. It's a great resource monster. And you probably just pawn off whatever it takes, really, and then benefit from that. Like I said, the Link 4 monsters aren't bad. A lot of them are really good. It's just you have to get to them, and then some of them limit themselves. So there's also limitations, with cards that summon tokens, cards that can summon multiple monsters to help, get multiple things on the field, and stuff like that. But I think this is the only one that I know that outside of Barrel Sword Dragon, I know Decode Talker and stuff like that don't specify names. I just wish they didn't. A lot of the good ones cut out the monsters. So yeah. All right. So that is them, and then on to the rest of the extra deck. Gaga Cowboy for the 800 points of damage. Abyss Dweller to deal with cards that resolve in the grave. Castell and Tornado Dragon are here for removal. I know it's funny, I have all these level 4s, and the only ones I run are multiple copies of um, what's her name? Fairy Tale Luna. But the ironic thing is that because of how this deck works, you can make that work with 2 Luna. And Luna can search for herself. You can also find magical adapters and rock them if you can. It, uh, Exciton Knight to wipe the board. Red Eyes is because you can take 2 Endymions and put them together. And then, the whole I burn for every time a card activates and resolves. I can be destroyed by a card effect while I have material. And then, this is just simple ways to put that together. As I scoot everything over, Big Eye makes his appearance to snatch and steal a monster. But he can't attack the turn he activates it, and then his effect, and then Babushka for the stall out. So that is pretty much it for my variation of Endymion. I hope you guys enjoy. I'll have more stuff up later on in the weekend for you guys. I just want to say thank you guys so much for all of your support. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe, as it helps out the channel tremendously. The Patreon is up, so if you guys want to help put in some money to Patreon. I guess that's like what it is. I'm very new to the Patreon thing, so it's there if you guys want to help out and put in. I don't really know exactly what I'm going to start putting like incentive of, but I think just more so of equipment and packs and stuff, so that we can have pack openings and box openings and stuff like that. But I guess that's just the tail end of it, and I'll have more stuff up if I can think of anything. But thank you guys so much for your support. Thank you guys, and I really do appreciate it. I will see you guys next time. HJ signing out. Take care.